Well, good morning, travelers. It is August the 11th, 2025, and straight from the Highlight Caffeinated Studio, this is According to Willie B, and I am your host for the next half hour. So, I have something that I'd like to share with each one of my listeners today, and I hope you will find it not only entertaining, but maybe informative and maybe a little bit on the crazy side, all wrapped into one. And we'll wrap it in bacon just in case, just for flavor. But the thing that I want to talk about is you remember we've talked about over a few podcasts, we've talked about cruise ships, we've talked about the all inclusive resorts, etc., and the differences between them, and talking about travel and how you have to stay flexible. And yeah, well, I'm going to share with you today wraps all of the stuff that I've set up into one podcast. And here's the thing: I just got off of a call with our friends that we're going on this trip to Niagara with at the end of September. This I have in my life have planned a lot of trips. I don't think I know that I haven't. I know that I have never planned and scheduled as much stuff as I have on this trip. This is a 9-day trip, all of it by car. Well, I'd say all of it by car. We do have two flights. We have they're in Dallas Fort Worth, and they'll be flying to New York, and we're here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we'll be flying to New York from here. So there was two, but everything else in between is car ride. Now, here's the problem: we're staying in nine. Let's see. There's six different hotels spread out over 9 days. So you have to schedule your hotels for each one of those cities that you're going to be in. And just to give you a rundown, and then we'll talk about each one. But we fly into New York. We'll spend about a day and a half in New York, New York. There's a lot to see and do there. Then on the third day, we're driving from New York to Niagara Falls. Then we get up the next morning. We spend all day in Niagara Falls. And then the next day, we get up and drive from Niagara Falls to Montreal. We spend the better part of a day in Montreal. And then we get up the next morning and drive to Mount Washington. That afternoon, we drive into Portland. And then from there, we drive from Portland the next day over to Boston, where we spend a couple days in Boston. So to schedule all of this travel, from the rental car to the flights to the hotels to the tickets for the different attractions that you want to do, it's insane. And we have spent about the better part of 3 months planning this thing out. And one interesting note came up that we still wanted to keep the spontaneity in the trip, because that's part of the fun of traveling, is being spontaneous, where everything is not scheduled, which is why I told you that I'm not crazy about cruise ships, because everything is so scheduled. You go to dinner at 7, you go to bed at 9, you got to be back on the ship at 3, you got to be back off the ship at 2. Yeah, it's all these schedules. It's like I don't want to schedule. So while we are going to have a 9-day itinerary, we're still going to have to be extremely flexible, because even though we want to try and fit in all of these cities into this 9 days across all of these miles, which is, I think it's about 1,800 miles total. The thing is you are going to have to be flexible, because you might not make it to one of the cities that you wanted to see. And then when you get off track, when you get off schedule by more than a couple hours on certain days, it could really throw the whole trip off, where you may have to bypass an entire town that you wanted to go to, like Portland or Mount Washington or any of those things. So it can be it's definitely when you plan something like this, it's definitely for someone that don't have the faint of heart. Let me tell you, because it could go south really quick. But you got to be able to take it on the chin and keep moving. But having as much travel, I think there's 3 days where there's one day that has about 7 hours of travel. There's one day that has about 9, almost 10 hours of travel, and still has tourist attractions built into those days. Some days we get a really early start. Some of us, of the four of us, some of us are early risers, and some of us are not. So it's going to be a testament of our friendship for sure, because I'm an early riser. So it doesn't bother me, but it's like, for example, when we leave New York, we have to get up at 4:30 a.m. To be over at JFK to pick up the rental car and then head out on the road to drive to Niagara. So, I get up at 5 a.m. every day. So 4:30 is not going to be that big a deal. But when you're not used to getting up that early every morning, it could, now, as long as I have coffee. Now, I've already told them if they get me coffee, I'll be fine. But if I don't have coffee and food, well, I'm not going to drive. I'll put the car in park and we will sit until they get me coffee and food, especially coffee. That's why I said coffee first. But, it will be a really intense trip. But if we pull this off, one, it's going to give me a lot to talk about from behind this mic, but it's also going to be very memorable that we saw this much stuff in 9 days, spread across such a wide region. I mean, if you think about, you're going to be in New York for about a day and a half, and you're going to take in Coney Island, Times Square, Statue of Liberty, Central Park, Empire State Building, Top of the Rock, and anything else that you can squeeze in. And then same thing with Niagara. You've got Behind the Falls tour. You've got the Maid of the Mist or the Hornblower, where they take you on a boat out where you'll get soaked. And you've got a lot of other different attractions, walking along the river and looking at the rapids. I think there's a place there that has Class 6 rapids, and that's supposed to be some of the most intense. I don't see me. Just to let you know, I'm not that Braveheart individual. I'm not scared of the water, but I'm not going to get in rapids. I'm sorry, that just doesn't seem like an adrenaline thing to me. But each to his own. So it'll be really cool and impressive to see all that. Montreal, there's so much to see and do in Montreal. There's the Basilica. There's on the way to Montreal from Niagara Falls, there's a castle. It's about a 2 to 3 hour tour of the Bolt Castle. And so that will be really cool, but it will be a challenge, to say the least, to fit that in on driving over to Montreal. Then you have an entire day in Montreal, but we actually leave at 5 p.m. headed over to Mount Washington. Mount Washington, we basically want to go up to the summit and see the observatory and the areas up there. And then over to Portland, because, they got lobster rolls over there. And, I found out today that they have a donut shop. It's supposed to be a really famous donut shop. And they're made from potato instead of your regular flour and et cetera. Yeah, they're made from potato. But they have a maple bacon donut. So whatever you want to make the rest of it out of, I don't care. It has maple and bacon on it, so I'm good. You can make it out of sandpaper if you want to. I'd probably still eat it. But that's just me. but there's so much stuff to see there in Portland and Mount Washington, and we're just gonna basically just scrape the edges of it and to get on over to Boston, where because everybody says, oh, if you go to Boston, you got to have at least 2 days for Boston, and there's just so much to see and do in Boston. Like you got the you remember the show Cheers? Well, there the famous Cheers bar is there, so you got to go check that out. There's just so much to see and do around Boston, and so it's going to be a challenge just getting all that in 2 days. It's the same thing with New York, New York. Trying to cover New York, New York in a couple of days, and you got Brooklyn Bridge, and you got I mean the list just goes on. I definitely want to in New York, New York. I definitely want to see the 911. I mean the sorry 9/11 memorial. That's what happens when I glance over at notes instead of just going off of memory. Uh, but I digress on that one. But same thing with New York. I mean, how many of you have seen the Statue of Liberty on TV or on the internet or in pictures, etc., or in movies? Well, so have I, but I've never seen it in person. And so that's the thing, seeing these different landmarks in different areas, in different cultures, and seeing them and experiencing them and being in an immersive environment is going to be really cool. But again, one slip up, one breakdown on a rental car. How many times have you had a rental car that broke down? So that's not a good thing. But it could really throw the whole trip off if we were delayed, say, by a day because of a car that broke down. And I know my friends are probably listening to this podcast going, "Hey, don't be saying things like that. You're going to jinx us." But in reality, you have to be ready for that. You have to be flexible. You have to, as I say, we have to take it on the chin and be able to spin it into something positive. And that is what makes travel unique, is being able to literally roll with the punches and keep going, because you can't get off track. You have to make the most of every day, and it's not unlike regular everyday life, right? You have to make the most of every day, but especially if you're on vacation, you definitely have to make the most of every day. But it's going to be an amazing trip, and I can't wait to come back and share the details with each and every one of you, because I know that there's going to be some stuff that happens on this trip. One, because I know the couple that we're traveling with. They're basically a mirror version of me. So I already know that, things are things are going to go crazy. But that's the other thing that, and I brought it up in the beginning of planning this travel, and I think anybody else would have too. If you've ever traveled in a car with family, and you've been in the car all day long, and everybody starts getting edgy and tired, and the least little things. So this couple that we're traveling with, I've been friends with him since kindergarten. We grew up in the same town. We have known each other our entire lives. I've known his wife most of my life, and my wife and I have traveled with them in other destinations and spent entire weekends doing stuff with them, different towns. And we always have an awesome time. We've made some great memories. But I did bring it up just because I thought it might be something that we should consider. And I said, do you think being in a car all day long, and I think we have 3 days that are pretty tough on travel. Other than that, not so much. Do you think it will wear on us being tired, starting early days and traveling all day in a car? And there's a couple of days where there's really not any stops per se, other than for gas, restroom, and food. I mean, that's the only stops there is. Do you think that we will kind of be edgy? And the entire group is like, no, don't see that at all. And that's what I didn't think so either, but I just kind of wanted to get everybody else's opinion on it, because that can be that can be an issue sometimes too. But the thing is, I think it comes down to, and they're seasoned travelers as well, and I think that's what it comes down to, is that if you're truly can take things on the chin and keep moving regardless of, hey, this means that we're not going to get to go to Portland. Hey, this means that we're not going to get to go do this. But if you look at the amount of stuff that we're going to cover and see during that 9 days, even if we missed an entire town, this is still going to be an epic trip. It's still going to get to be something that we are truly blessed to get to do. And so we have to remember that. And so I really don't think that part will be an issue, because I've had some people going, man, I don't know if I could travel with friends. I don't know if I could travel with my own family that long in a car. It's like, well, it's you gotta be able to take the roll with the punches, go with the flow, and not take things, not take things for granted that you're getting to travel and see all these amazing things. So, but it's it absolutely will be an epic trip. But one of the things that I probably get more concerned with than anything, and you're gonna laugh, or you may scratch your head and look at me sideways, I don't know, but it's the hotels. I have come to learn that when you book hotels, that especially in a town that you've never been to, and you book a hotel, and it looks really good on the internet. I mean, they do a phenomenal job posting those pictures, you know, and you get there and you're like, wait, what? This is not what I saw on the internet. And case in point was the one I told you about in France that turned out to be a barge. So I hope that I have done enough research on this trip that none of these hotels are a barge. I'm sure my friends are going, we might want to double check those hotels he booked just to make sure he didn't book another barge. I think I learned my lesson the first time. But that's the thing, is things like that can happen. Because most of these hotels we're staying in are not like major chain hotels. They're one, two, three. I'm looking at the agenda. One, two, three, four of them are basically end with the word in, INN. So be prepared for anything. So, looking at the pictures and reading and doing my due diligence and reading reviews, etc. I think we've made good choices, but there's always that one. It was the way it was in France. All the hotels I chose were spot on, except for one, and it was a barge. So, France, I think taught me a lot about traveling. Like the bathroom incident. We're not gonna go there again, but yeah, I've learned a lot when it about when it comes to traveling. But the rental car thing, making sure that you picked a sound car that looks roadworthy. Your hotels, your traveling, making sure things that you don't get stolen, your car doesn't get broken into because you've got all your stuff in the car. And then of course I'll be traveling with a bunch of camera equipment, filming episodes for Culinary Highway, as well as gathering information to come back here to you guys for, because just looking at this agenda, I'm gonna say this is probably gonna give me about 2 months podcast just off of this one trip. But next week, I will remind you, next week I'll be in Florida. I do have a couple really cool things that I found outside of Gainesville that I want to bring back and talk to you about. And I hope you find those interesting, so that if you decide that you're headed to Florida anytime soon, that's a place you would want to check out. But that's kind of what I wanted to share with you today was this whole 9 day. Well, actually, if you include the last day of flight, it's actually 10 days because we fly into New York. Then we pick up the car, and then when we get to Boston, we turn the car in, and then we'll fly home from Boston. So it's definitely going to be an interesting trip, but I think it's going to be epic. But I wanted to share the behind the scenes details with you because Kelly and I have worked on planning this trip for the last at least 3 months, and every 2 weeks we do about a 2 hour phone call and we go over all the details. And I found this, well, here's this hotel, and okay, we got this hotel booked. And so when I know 2 weeks ago when we finally got the last hotel nailed down, it was like, oh, okay, we got all the hotels done, the flights are done, the rental cars done, the you know uh the hotels are done. And now we're going to start looking at if there's some specialty restaurants that we want to eat at. Do we need to make reservations? As a matter of fact, there's one that you may find interesting. There's one in New York, New York, and it's the one they just made that movie about, the Nanas, that restaurant. And they've gotten so much fame from that movie that they can't even handle the business they have. Like you can call daily and you can't even get through. They're just so overwhelmed, which is a good thing. It's a double-edged sword. It's a good thing, but it's probably going to prevent us from being able to have dinner there because they're just so booked up so far ahead. Last I heard, they were taking reservations for next year. So that's crazy, but I'm glad to hear that a small mom and pop restaurant is getting that kind of recognition. I'm sure that there are days that they don't feel that way. Having been in the restaurant business, I can understand it's a double-edged sword. But so there'll be some cool places to eat, some cool places to talk about. But I wanted to share some of the behind the scenes of how much insanity in the planning of a trip like this. Like I said, this is the biggest trip because there's so many moving pieces, so many different towns, and have to arrive by this time, and we have to leave town by 3 p.m. in order to get to the next town. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, and I hope you found it interesting. And if you ever have any kind of questions about travel and how I go about getting travel discounts, or how I go about booking travel and things like that, there's some secrets that I've learned along the way. You're welcome to email me at accordingtowillieb@gmail.com, and I'll be glad to fill you in, because I always like to share some of the tips and tricks that I've found. And maybe in the near future I'll do a podcast on just some of the tips and tricks I've learned along the way. But until I talk to you guys next week, I hope each and one of you have a great day, and I appreciate each and every one of you listening. And until I see you again, don't forget to caffeinate and conquer, and have a great day. Bye-bye.